Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Meaningful People podcast. Before we jump into who we sat down with this week, make sure, a lot of you commented in last week's YouTube video, and we selected two winners, one for $250, one for some Meaningful Minute swag. We replied to your comments, so go back and check if you see that reply. But anyways, the new question for this week to reply to in the comments here on YouTube is, where are you watching this video from? It could be like, I'm watching this from South Africa. I'm watching this from Lawrence, New York. I'm watching this from Florida. Drop that in the comments. Make sure to like and leave a comment. Like the video, leave a comment to enter to win a raffle for $250 and a second winner for some Meaningful Minute swag. Very simple. I sat down with Rabbi David Kalmus, and his story is unbelievable. It's a journey of really not having any God in his life whatsoever, not knowing anything about Yiddishkeit, all the way to becoming the first Rosh Yeshiva of an English-speaking Breslov Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. It's unreal. The twists and turns of this story, buckle up, because this is unreal. This episode is sponsored by Isaac Newman, L'zecher Nishmas, his mother, Chama Paramalkolea, Bas Aryeh Leib. Of course, this episode is also brought to you in part by our friends at Kol Chabad. Yes, you hear that noise? That is the noise that you make when you give tzedakah on the Kol Chabad app. And that noise, says the Baal Shem Tov, is what confuses the Satan. It really stirs the Satan. So make sure you download the Kol Chabad app today, the Pushka app. It is pushka.cc/meaningful. That is pushka.cc/meaningful. Hit the link in the show notes below. Download the Pushka app today and give tzedakah every single time before you go out in the morning. Give $1 to tzedakah on that app. And then you just empty that tzedakah box to Kol Chabad, who are doing such life-saving work all over Eretz Yisrael, feeding the poor, taking care of the needy. That is Kol Chabad. Of course, I want to mention a friend of ours who you are familiar with, and that is Ray of Hope. We've had Zeldy Brody on this podcast, and we discussed sexual abuse, what Ray of Hope does for those survivors. Nobody should feel alone when they go through this challenge. And that is what Ray of Hope ensures through their support groups, through their resources, through the help they provide. Ray of Hope has changed hundreds and thousands of lives through their life-saving work. And it's time that we are there for them. They have this campaign running September 18th and September 19th. You're going to head to causematch.com/Ray of Hope US. That is causematch.com/Ray of Hope US, or hit the link in the show notes of this episode. And if that episode with Zeldy spoke to you at all, give a donation. It could be $18, it could be $36, it could be $3,600, whatever it is. Help them continue the amazing work that they do over there at Ray of Hope. Thank you, Zeldy, and your team. We don't know what this world would look like without you. Now, enjoy this episode.
You are listening to the Meaningful People podcast.
The podcast featuring our nation's most impactful, influential,
and meaningful people.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Excited to sit down with you.
Pleasure to be here.
Read your story. It's quite amazing.
Oh, Shem.
But I'm going to make believe I don't really know anything about it.
Okay, cool.
So,
Sounds good.
I guess please take me from Aleph. What was your upbringing like?
So I grew up in New Jersey, in Marlborough, New Jersey. Amazing parents, very supportive, loving, unconditionally loving. And they put me into a Orthodox preschool, even though my family's secular. So this is very unusual for a secular family to put their kids into an Orthodox Jewish preschool. But they told me because they were the only school that would take you all day, they put me in there. So when I started doing tshuva, 20-something years later, they told me that I actually wanted them to keep Shabbat and wanted them to keep kosher. I told them that I want to be a singing, dancing rabbi when I get older, which is pretty apropos considering I became a Breslover. And now I'm a rabbi. But so that's kind of how everything started.
Spoiler alert.
And but then they took me out of that school and I went into the public school system. And Judaism was not really a part of my life. Spirituality was not a part of my life. God was not a part of my life. And I was always a deep thinker. I was always thinking about things that maybe kids my age were not thinking about at a very young age. And I had a little bit of a challenge with my friend group growing up. I was part of like what people probably consider like the cool kids. but I didn't feel like a cool kid. I was just like kind of lagging along in this group, but I always felt different than those kids.
Right.
I didn't understand like necessarily why they would speak badly about each other or why they wouldn't keep secrets that other people told them. And so on the one hand, I'm like trying to put on this appearance like I'm just like everyone here. That way I could stay in the group. But on the other hand, I felt like an alien. And that all kind of like came to a head when, you know, I really was proven that in some sense I was different because I started to get alienated from the group.
How old are you when that started happening?
Probably 5th grade.
5th grade. Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty young.
Yeah, it was pretty young. I think like since then I've seen it's called like social bullying. There's like different types of bullying. I was diagnosed with ADD when I was older, and they say that one of like the features of a person who has ADD is very often they have comorbid mental health issues, which could mean like anxiety, depression, along with substance abuse. But in addition to that, they often get bullied. Part of the reason is because they don't necessarily realize the effect and the influence they're having on the people around them. And they're not picking up on those social cues. So maybe like they're feeling like they're emitting positive energy into the place and everyone's like, this is too much, you know?
Right.
So this is not to like excuse necessarily anything that happened or to reconcile it in that way, but just looking back, trying to make sense of why it happened the way it happened. But essentially I was like ostracized, and that experience for me was very painful. And I didn't have Kaylee, my name vessels, to like really understand why that was taking place. I just knew that I felt like really broken and confused.
In this part of your life, I guess 5th grade, your Judaism is completely not
a part of my life. We went on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to shul.
In Marlboro?
In Marlboro. But we weren't fasting. You know, I wasn't fasting certainly on Yom Kippur. Maybe my parents were, but like drinking coffee, you know, like driving to shul. Driving to shul, yeah. And it wasn't like we thought that there's an alternative. It's not like, you know, I think a lot of religious people, there's like kind of like this ethos in the religious world that non-religious Jews like are running away from the truth, or they don't want the responsibility. If they knew how far away the world was from where we are, I think that they would understand that it's much less about running away, and it's much more like they have no idea.
That's what I think recently. Like a lot of the work we do at Meaningful Minute, I like, we're not a Kiruv organization, right? We're not like Chabad, for example, but this point that you just made is becoming very apparent to me that people are they're Jewish, but they just don't know anything about Judaism, and they're not running from anything. They're not like, they hate anything. They don't know Aleph. They don't know.
I didn't know what tefillin was growing up. I didn't know what Shabbat was growing up. I didn't know.
Really?
Yeah, I never heard of that.
That's funny because like there's a lot of like non-Jews who know what Shabbos is.
Yeah, I wasn't one of those non-Jews. I was one of those Jews that didn't know.
The Jew that didn't know what Shabbos was.
Yeah, the Jew didn't know what Shabbos was.
It's a good title.
Yeah. Apparently I must have known when it was preschool, but then I guess like when I got into the public school system, I kind of forgot. You know, I was very young then.
Yeah.
And so I at the same time though, I always had this like sneaking suspicion that there was God when I was much younger. And even though we never spoke about him, I always kind of felt like there was one. And when I started to have like these things take place socially in school, in addition to kind of like becoming more mindful about the fact that there's a lot wrong in the world, you know, whether there's sociological issues or whether there are socioeconomic issues, whether there's poverty, whether there's illness. You know, again, I told you I was thinking about things that like a lot of kids my age were not thinking about. I was thinking about all those things when I was young.
Did that come from your parents? Were they
social advocates?
Yeah. I was gonna ask, like, did you guys grow up like liberal or?
We definitely grew up liberal.
Okay.
Definitely grew up liberal. That probably has something to do with it because there's a lot of that ethos in the liberal world. But I wasn't even at that point yet, that stage where like that stuff's being educated into me. I just was born like that.
What was going on in the world at this time in your life? I'm curious, like, how old are you now?
Now I'm 35.
So
then I was like 9 or 10.
So this is like early 2000.
Yeah. I think even the stuff I'm talking about is not really central to any time period. There's always been poverty.
It's just stuff that's going on inside your head.
It's just stuff that's going on in the world.
Right.
It's always been going on in the world. And then like you get to a certain age when you're aware of more than just yourself. I think for some people that takes a long time or that never happens.
Right.
But for me, it took place at a very early age. Maybe part of it was because of what I went through. Maybe part of it is because I think a little bit different, or I am a little bit different. I don't really know.
Did you have siblings? Do you have
I had
siblings?
one older brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much older is he?
He's 3.5 years older than me.
I guess what was your relationship like with him at this time?
Yeah, I mean, we had some similarities in the fact that we both had a learning disability and we both struggled at school, even though our struggle looked different. And I think once you get to like close to 4 years, that's like a big age gap. It's like almost like a new generation.
Okay.
So I think it's a little bit difficult, especially I guess in that type of family where it's just two and they have their own friend group and you have your own friend group. So I think growing up, there was like a little bit of a challenge to connect in that way. As we've gotten older and I have a family now and he has a family now. So I think we have more like points of connection, but it didn't really come from anything in the family. It
Right.
really was just like, I was always thinking and caring and wondering, why are people suffering? And
So
then,
you said at this point you felt that there is a God.
yes, I did. But then once all this stuff started happening, I started to question that.
Okay.
And because there's no conversation going on about God in the world that I come from, so there's no place to like really even explore it. I also didn't talk about it to anybody. It was just like my own personal dialogue. And then when I was going into middle school, I found a book on evolutionary theory. And this for me was like the first epiphany I ever had in my life. Because at that point, all these questions that I had, like why are people cruel to others? Why are people like always in a power play? Why are certain girls only attracted to certain types of guys? And like all of these different things that I didn't understand why it works the way it works. All of a sudden I open up this book and it's describing how all of these things are a function of the fact that we're evolved monkeys. And so for me, maybe if you grew up religious, so this is like might sound silly, right?
Yeah.
But if you grow up secular and you're not brought up with a mindset.
So the evolution is something that perhaps that's what you're probably thinking. Like this is
In this case, it answered all my questions.
right.
So, when you find something that answers questions you've had for a long time, something you've been deeply thinking about and you didn't expect it to come from this way, it's like, oh my gosh, that's right. Like the reason these kids are like this is because they're like monkeys, So on the other hand, that also leaves a gaping hole in you if you're searching for something deeper.
Right.
So I get my questions answered, Baruch Hashem, thank God. And now I feel certain there is no God. And I feel certain that religion is like the greatest cause of all types of, interference in societal progress and X, Y, and Z. That's the cause of wars. That's the cause of violence. It's the cause of misunderstanding, whatever. It's holding us back. But on the other hand, I had a very deep hole that came from that feeling and knowing that there was nothing meaningful in life inherently.
So the answer that you jumped on, it answered the short term, but long term, it left you with more questions.
Didn't leave me with a question, just left me with a hole, a big hole.
And what happened with that hole, I guess? How did it fester over the years?
Yeah, so that hole festered in a lot of different ways. Usually in the secular world, I think that hole is festered through physical means, whether that's through drugs or whether it's through alcohol, whether that's through clubbing, or whether that's through music, or whether that's through traveling across the world or gambling.
Searching, yeah.
Yeah, or searching, You're just trying to fill it up any way you can. I think a lot of people don't even realize that they have the hole. And so they're just like, what's the next meal? And so they never even get to ask themselves the question because they're constantly filling the hole.
Right.
Or thinking that they're filling the hole. But for me, it was a gnawing hole and it was a big one. And so, on the one hand, I was becoming like a religious atheist, which might sound paradoxical. But It wasn't like I just had like a sneaking suspicion, I was like very passionate about it. I was reading all the Sfarim, reading all the books, listening to all the Shiurim, all the podcasts.
So religious atheist, meaning like you weren't like a passive atheist, but like, oh yeah, God doesn't exist. But you were like, no. Like, you were.
I was sure. And I would go up to anybody who I thought believed in God. I'd spend hours with them trying to disprove God.
At what age?
Middle school, high school.
Wow.
College, I got more. And then
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Penn State for
that's a
psychology.
beautiful place.
Yeah. I went to Penn State, and then between Penn State and the graduate school, I went to UCLA for social
Another
work.
Beautiful place.
Yeah. So
Wow.
that was kind of like where things took another big shift. But yeah, so it's like this. I'm living with these two realities. It's the like I finally found my answers, and these answers left me with a very big hole. And for a person who has like I'm very sensitive, not just emotionally, but I'm just sensitive to everything.
Right.
So that person is like very susceptible to developing like abuse for drugs and doing things that are very dangerous. And you're very lucky if you survive like your 20s. I had a lot of instances that I was very lucky to make it out of. One point, like, doctors even thought I was having a heart attack, and I had to be shipped on a plane from the Virginia hospital to the local hospital, back and forth. Baruch Hashem, it wasn't the heart attack. It was like myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart. So you feel the same pain they said. It's what it feels like when you have a heart attack, but you're not actually it's not a threat of death. But that moment was kind of like the doctors telling me, listen, David, we've never done cocaine before. Sounds like a lot of fun, but if you do it again, like, you probably won't live anymore.
Was that something that you were deep into?
Yeah. When I'm younger, like, that hole was filled with just pot. I was the first one to smoke pot in my school. I was probably one of the first ones.
It's a great accomplishment.
Yes, to sell it. Yeah, no, I'm not bragging about it.
Is that in your yearbook?
I'm not encouraging anybody on it. But there are going to be people who are listening who I think have experienced what I'm talking about.
For sure.
And so I just want them to know they're not alone. So anyway.
Also, it's important to acknowledge that might be a gateway.
Yeah. Well,
this is something that's super prevalent in our world today,
right?
Even the frum world, marijuana. Right. It's something that's commonplace, and
legal now,
and legal.
Yeah.
Should it, like, do you discourage people from recreationally?
I think that we're in a generation that everybody is looking to get high, and
looking at numb also pain.
Yeah, and I think that some people. I don't even just mean in that sense. I mean, everyone's looking to, like, leave their attachments behind, to leave behind servitude, even of the mind, of the heart. And so for a secular person, that outlet comes through drugs. For a religious person, that might come through Hasidus, right? But everybody is looking for a way to have a better life or to have a higher consciousness. And so for many people that they don't find a healthy or spiritual version of that, it automatically leads to things that you might get that experience temporarily, but you also have a lot of negatives that come along with it, including the fact of dependence, that it never really brings you there. There's a lot of different challenges that come along with it. Thank God, in some ways, because it got so intense and because I had such a struggle with it, I didn't want to die. So I stopped. So I was
Just like that.
Because I really wasn't, I never developed an addiction, which I know a lot of people do. I ended up becoming a therapist and a substance abuse counselor. So I know a lot of people with addiction. I wouldn't be in the category of addiction because I never needed to do it, even though I often wanted to do it. So when I had to stop, it wasn't a hard thing for me because I'd rather live. But for people who have an addiction, that choice becomes a lot more difficult.
Might be a silly question, but when you were, I guess, in that religious atheist phase of life, would you, consider yourself to have been a happy person?
No. I experienced a depressive episode every year since I was 10. Usually we come in the winter time when the weather started getting worse. It would include me just feeling very morbid and morose. I would spend a lot of time just watching TV and vegging out on my bed, going to school and locking myself in my room for the rest of the day, doing it again the next day. And, only months down the line when my mom, kind of hopped the fact that something's wrong with David and then asked me, are you okay? And then after months and months of me just holding in, I would just burst out crying. And then, she would try to get me help. So from 10 years old until my mid 20s, I guess about 15 years or so, I've had more depressive episodes than I can count on my hands and feet.
So the religious atheist wasn't bringing you happiness or joy or fulfillment.
Right. So that's kind of what I was alluding to, that on the one hand, it's bringing you answers, but those answers are also very unfulfilling.
Right.
So yeah, it was a very challenging cycle for me. And as I got older and as my responsibilities grew, and as I went to places where, let's say, there was less supervision, so this became like a more dangerous experience. And it also became much more, like the depressive episodes became much more debilitating as I got older,
Right.
than they were like when I was younger and I was by myself. Now they're becoming, more debilitating, and I need more help, and it's taking me longer to get out of them. So yeah.
So I imagine you get out of this hospital stay and you said no more drugs. Did at that point things start turning around for you?
No. They did turn around the fact that I wasn't putting my life at risk anymore.
Okay.
But I still have to fill the hole. So
What do you fill it with if not drugs?
I found Breslov Hasidus
Okay.
eventually. At first, I went to Israel, and when I went to Israel, I felt like I was home, even though I'd never been there. And so I guess I should backtrack a second.
Yeah.
How did I get to Israel?
Yeah. So you're
Yeah.
you left this hospital. How short after there did you go to Israel?
And not so long after, I went to a concert. I used to travel around the world to see this band, Dave Matthews Band. So I would travel all over to see
I've
them.
heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a concert in their hometown, which is Charlottesville, Virginia. So for me, this is like Lahavdil, a Jew. Like I have to go to the homeland to see where it all started. For me, it was like I have to go to the homeland of Charlottesville to see where this whole thing started. They were like my Rabbi Nachman before Rabbi Nachman. So I was like traveling around. I had all their quotes on my walls. I was telling everybody like how deep these lyrics were.
It's so funny. Recently, a couple nights ago, the Mets were playing the Cubs on ESPN, and Dave Matthews was at the game, and they had him on the screen. And another camera captured a guy walking to his seat in the outfield wearing a Dave Matthews Band shirt. And the announcers were just like relishing. They're like, "Oh man, if this guy only knew who was at the game."
Right.
So it's like, what's that law? Murphy's Law. When you hear one thing, and now it's just like, of course, I'm hearing about Dave Matthews Band today.
Right.
Okay, so you're a big chassid.
Yeah, I was a big chassid of Dave Matthews, and so now it's like an amazing opportunity. This is like after almost 30 concerts, going down to Charlottesville with my best friend, and when I was there, that's when I had that's when I had this whole heart issue thing come up. And after that, so I would say that this drug that I tried afterwards was not something that can risk your life. So I stopped doing all the life limiting drugs. I did another one, which was the last time that I did anything.
Right, okay.
Okay. And this was a hallucinogenic drug. And this was at Atlantic City in a festival that I went to, which had Dave Matthews Band, but it also had other music there. And so someone came around with like a little thing with smiley faces. And so I tried it because I was very adventurous. And again, I'm always trying to fill the hole. So I took it, and I think my friend just like probably had a very uplifting concert, and it like amplified all the five senses. But for me, I had like a chazon. I think what in the psychological world they would say is a hallucination.
Right, okay.
But for me, it was a very spiritual experience. And, it says that Hashem showed the first conscious man, Adam Rishon, from the beginning till the end. I had something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me a little more about this.
So it's really hard to kind of explain, but it's like Hashem used this very low experience to, Rabbi Nachman speaks about Hastar Shebetoch Hastar, like Hashem is hiding the fact that he's hiding. So when you're so far, he needs to enclose himself in like whatever means necessary to find his way to you. So in this case, it was this experience.
Okay.
And kind of like what came out of it was that everything that happened in the past will happen again. And that was kind of like the theme of the entire thing. What was will be, what was will be. Happens to be, as I started doing tshuva years later, I saw this was actually a pasuk in Kohelet. And the pasuk says, what was will be. And the Zohar speaks about that pasuk. Ma shaya hu shiyeh, what was will be. Says that this is a proof that Moshe Rabbeinu, the soul of Moses, just like he was the first Redeemer, he's going to be the final Redeemer. Meaning that even though that we know that Mashiach ben David comes from the house of David, so that's only his body. He's genetically from the tribe of David. But what's his consciousness? What's his soul? What does he teach you? He teaches you what's in Moshe. And so that was very connected to what I saw. And how did they learn that from the pasuk? Because the Roshei Tevot, the first letters of that pasuk, spells Moshe, Mem, Shin, Hey. So it's hinted to in there. So anyway, that was a big part of what I saw. was just how this happened before. This is going to happen again. And I never learned the Torah. So I didn't have a reference point.
You didn't know what tefillin was, or
Right, I
what
didn't know what
Shabbos,
tefillin was. Right. So all these things that I saw, I didn't have a reference point for them. It's not like I learned them previously. And now it's like maybe in the recesses of my childhood mind, and now it's coming out. I never saw it. So obviously when I actually saw it in Tanakh, so that was like a very,
full circle. But the next morning when you, I guess, woke up, what was your...
So I had one nafka mina that came out immediately while I was at the concert, which is I told my friend Dave, we have to go visit Israel. And so for him, he was like,
was he Jewish?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's Jewish. He actually lives in Israel.
Did he? I mean,
no, he didn't. He didn't end up going the same way I did.
Okay.
But
he's there.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Did that trip did you guys take together? Is that was his first trip also?
That was his first trip also.
And did he come back since, or he's been there since?
He was actually there longer than I was.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a life-changing trip.
It was life-changing for both of us.
So I imagine it was birthright.
It was birthright.
Okay. So take me through the birthright trip.
Yeah. So we signed up for a secular birthright trip, obviously, and we actually didn't get on because they weren't sure if we were Jewish based on the history that we said, even in the secular trip. So I encouraged my friend to like get us signed up again. And I don't think he was really sure why I was so insistent on going to Israel, but I couldn't get this thing out of my mind. Like, I have to go to Israel. I have to go to Israel. So finally we go and we're about to board the plane, and I see what for me at this point was the most religious people I ever met in my life, which were these Persian modern Orthodox boys. And two of them were on this trip, and one of them took like a black leather strap and starts like tying it around his arm. So I got really nervous for him because I didn't know what that was.
Right.
So I came over to him and I said, everything okay? I was already like going towards the mental health field. So I was like, everything okay? He's like, yeah. What's up? So I said, good. Anything you want to talk about? He's like, no, I'm okay. I was like, what are you doing? So he's like, I'm wrapping tefillin. I was like, what is that? And then he starts to explain to me.
That's funny.
And I was like, I was thinking like this, oh my gosh, we got on such a religious trip. I'm like, this kid's in a cult. So,
wow. Yeah. That's so funny. But like, I never, him explaining to you what it was and you knowing nothing. So he says these are phylacteries. We have the Shema in it. Like, that probably meant nothing to you.
No.
It was just like, it was Spanish. It was.
Yeah, I had no idea what he was talking about. I was just like, this is like, wow, like this is.
I always wondered what like non-Jews think of us when we're putting out tefillin on a plane or in an airport, and they see us. What do they think?
Well, I guess just imagine like you see somebody else. They put like a balloon on their head. What would you think if they did that? And you had like a whole group of people putting a balloon on their head, and they look very like into it as they're putting on that balloon on their head, and they put also a balloon on their arm.
Yeah,
I'm not making light of tefillin.
But that's the mindset.
But that's like you have no reference point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So anyway, it happened to be because of like what I realized later, kind of like the ethos of the modern Orthodox world. They're very spiritual. They love the land of Israel. They're very proud to be Jewish, but they also really like to have a good time. Yeah. So they saw me and my best friend as like we were the two oldest guys on the trip. They're like, these kids are going to be a lot of fun. And we are like, these are like these two interesting boys in this cult. And so we just connected and we hung out the entire trip and we got really close and we spent like every day together. And at the end of the trip, one of them asked me, do you want to extend the trip and travel around to Israel with me? So I was planning on going to another Dave Matthews Band concert. I called my dad and my dad said to me, David, listen, you're about to start graduate school. You're not going to have time or money to do stuff like this anymore. So see how much it costs to extend. If it's not so much, you should stay. So I looked it up and it was $50 to extend for the trip. So for a whole month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
that's a good deal.
Yeah. So for me, like, even though I don't know what Hashgacha Pratit is at this point, I'm just like, okay, I can't really, I have no excuse not to do this. $50. Right. I could do $50. It's less than the concert.
And it seems like your father was kind of supportive of it.
Yeah, because he didn't see this as like, this is going to end up turning into my son becoming a frum, like religious Jew.
Right.
It was just like you're in a stage of your life right now when you can go on vacation, when you can try new things, when you can travel and you can spend time doing things that are not necessities in your life. Take advantage now because you're about to start graduate school. You're going to have to start paying for everything and you're going to have to start working. So you just simply pragmatically won't have time for these things anymore.
That's funny. So he didn't think of it of like, my son's going to
connect to his Judaism.
Yeah.
No.
So he was so far removed.
just my family is just, and it's not just my family, it's 80% of the Jewish world is like this. So again, this is what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
that people in the religious world, even in the modern Orthodox world, they don't know how far secular people are from this life.
I'm saying you were better off at that point than a lot of, meaning if your father knew a little bit more about Judaism, I don't think he'd be so fond of you extending, because he would think, oh, my son's becoming more religious.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge that a lot of people have.
Right.
If their parents are like, no. I speak to a lot of recruiters, people who
Right.
try to get guys to go to Israel and Yeshiva,
Right.
and the parents are like pumping the brakes.
Right. That's true. So it could be in this case, it definitely played to
So
my
it helped
advantage
you,
because
yeah.
there was no resistance to staying in Israel, because it's just, you're just in another country.
Right.
It wasn't like this is our homeland.
So where'd you guys travel?
We went all over Israel, and the week before we left, we went to the city of Eilat, and we rented a house in Eilat. And the whole night, we're just like, the whole week, we're just drinking every night, doing the same thing that I've been doing for the past 4 years in college. And Thursday night before the weekend, which was right before we left, we were out, and I was coming out of a bar, and I was at this bar, and I'm just like, I don't know, it was like me, I was there, I'm doing the same thing that I'm doing every single night for years. And it's just like not leading me to ever feeling fulfilled. Not that like if logically I would have thought about it, like why would I ever think that this is going to bring me to like necessarily a better place than I was prior to coming? But it's just not. And maybe it was the air of Israel was just making me think a little bit deeper about my life. But as we're walking out of this bar, I'm just like feeling like kind of like a gnawing disappointment in my life. And like, what am I doing? Where am I going? And as we're walking out, I see a group of girls. So one of these girls was like staring at me, and I wasn't used to that. Usually I'm the one pursuing, and then they're like playing hard to get, or they're not interested at all and they're like running away. But it's not usually like the girl himself is looking at me. So I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. So I went over to go speak, and these two modern Orthodox Persian boys told me, David, these girls are not like the girls you're used to at Penn State. So I said, what do you mean? Well, she's like, well, you see how hot it is outside? I was like, yeah. He's like, you see how long their shirt is? I said, okay. And he said, you see how they have a skirt like below their knees? I was like, all right. They're like, yeah, she's religious. So I was like, okay. I didn't know what it meant. And so I just went over and started talking to them.
I mean, but like you're an atheist.
Right.
So you knew that's the opposite of you.
I knew, yeah, but I also it wasn't like I'm making such an investment now in my life that
It's not a deal breaker. I'm just going to have fun.
Yes, exactly. So that's what I did. And I didn't realize at the time that like very few Yemenite Israeli girls speak perfect English. Happened to be that her mother was an English teacher, and her parents got divorced, and her stepfather was Canadian. So between the two, she spoke perfect English. And we had an amazing conversation. Like I never had a conversation with a girl like this.
What do you guys talk about?
It was just her way, like I kind of part of like growing up again, not feeling connected to the people who I grew up with, specifically girls. Like how I grew up in the world I grew up in, secular Jewish girls in like the tri-state area, there's like very few things that they're really concerned about. And one of them is like, what's your occupational trajectory? How much money do you plan on making? What type of car do you drive? And none of these things I ever cared about.
Right.
And it was very hard for me even to like manufacture like a fake version of this to even get it out, because it was so unnatural to me. So when I started going to college, I stopped hanging out with Jewish girls like almost entirely. I was like only hanging out with non-Jewish girls. They were much more simple. They didn't ask me how much money I made. The conversations were like not like purely intellectual. And I was like, oh, this is great. I even told my grandfather, who was a Holocaust survivor, like, I'm never going to marry a Jewish girl. And there was the one time that he ever got really mad at me, and he told me, don't invite me to your wedding. I'm not coming. And it happened to be that a lot of those things that I actually did connect to, whether that's tamimut, like simplicity, or pshitut, like authenticity, like all of these things, happens to be that they're very commonplace in the Yemenite Israeli culture.
Yeah.
And so I saw that in her, even though she's Jewish. And not only she's Jewish, she's really Jewish. You know? So I'd actually got to a point, like a little bit of a spoiler alert, at some point we start dating, and I was going through a very difficult internal process with this, because on the one hand, I loved everything about her. And on the other hand, I saw the fact that she was religious as a huge impediment to us being together and to her having a good life.
We'll be right back to this episode in just a second, but a quick word from my friends at Leman Achai. Ooh, I love talking about them, and this time they are running this amazing program. You can now send a free personalized Rosh Hashanah e-card for free on their website. Head to lemanachai.org, okay? Maybe to your mom, maybe to your father, maybe to a friend. It is Elul. We all can use a hug. It has been quite the year, a year that we never, ever could have imagined. And here's your opportunity to show somebody that you care, that you are there for them, that you are thinking about them. And there's no limit to how many you can send. You're going to head to lemanachai.org, or you can hit the link in the show notes of this episode. If you have somebody in mind that you want to send a beautiful e-card to, they have so many different types. They have the meaningful book of life. They have the cute musical message. There's so many you can see right now on their website. Head to lemanachai.org, hit the link in the show notes of this episode, and make sure you send the e-card. It's free. It costs you nothing, and it can mean so much to that person you send to. So go ahead. Before Rosh Hashanah, make sure you are sending your e-cards to your friends, your families, the people who you care about. So go ahead and send your e-card today. Have you ever considered automating document creation, invoice generation, or how you communicate with your clients? I'm sure you have. As a business owner, some of this stuff is so tedious, and it's so unnecessarily tedious. You need to be working with my friends at Skive. Skive specializes in building software systems using off-the-shelf solutions to automate and streamline business operations. Maybe you're using ClickUp, SmartSuite, Airtable, DocuSign, or any other of those programs that are currently existing. Well, Skive comes in and says, okay, this is an amazing platform, but what we're going to do is we're going to customize it for your business. You're paying for this platform. You have a subscription, but is it serving you, or are you just paying them? For the business owner that is overwhelmed, for the business owner that doesn't have the money to build custom software to do these things, Skive is there for you. So make sure you book a meeting today with Zalman. The Calendly link is in the show notes in the description of this episode. Go ahead. So many of you have already done it and have been so happy with what you're seeing. Book a meeting today. No commitment necessary. Book a meeting today with Zalman and find out how Skive can help you run your business more efficiently.
I'm curious, that's your perspective, but what was her perspective? She's dating someone who's a proud atheist, and she's a religious girl. Did she think that I'm gonna get him to become religious, or? Yeah.
So again, I think that the way that Sephardim grow up, not all of them, if they're Haredi, but if they're less than that, where they still keep Shabbat, they still keep kosher, but they're a little bit more open to the entire Jewish population. There's a little bit less resistance to certain outside. Even within their families, they have the whole spectrum of Jewish life, and nobody feels or makes anybody feel a different way, whatever. So I think for her, it wasn't as unnatural as somebody else saying oh, this person is an atheist. First of all, she didn't know right away. It took time for me to even tell her. But I don't think... A lot of people ask her, why would you date somebody like that? And she told me straight up, when we get married, if we get married, for me and you, it's okay. This is your journey, and I'm going to do what I do, and that I'm not changing that. But when we have kids, it's going to be a problem.
That's the thing that you had to think about.
Yeah, so I had to think about that. It wasn't enough for me to change myself, because I can never change unless it resonated as true with me. But in that first initial conversation with her, I was you want to hang out tomorrow night? Because I'm thinking it's getting late. It's Thursday night. Tomorrow night's Friday night. Friday night's when people go out. So I said, would you like to go out tomorrow night? So she said, tomorrow night's Shabbat. So I was like, what's that? And she starts to explain to me, kind of like the whole tefillin thing.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a party. She's like, people, drinks, food, I was like, okay, that sounds great. I'd love to come. She's like, no, it's family, we're here, whatever. I was like, okay, you guys have Facebook? They're like, no. And so everything that I'm asking, she's saying no. And on the other hand, she's not leaving. So again, I'm confused about what's going on here. And ultimately I just said okay, it was nice to meet you. I didn't know another way to continue this. She kept saying no to everything. So I left, and I couldn't stop thinking about her for the next few hours. And now it's 2 a.m. and we're getting food late night. It's the only place that's still open. And she walks in with her sisters again. So again, I don't know about... This isn't a lot. I don't know about Hashgacha Pratit. I don't know about any of these things. apparently, I don't know if she was pregnant or she was just hungry, but her sister, no, her best friend, like wouldn't let them go to sleep until they found sushi. So because of that,
You're
like,
saying you weren't sure if her friend was hungry or just pregnant?
yeah, I forget which one what my wife told me, but there was whatever the reason was, she was not letting them go to sleep. Otherwise, they should be going to sleep, right? There's nothing for them to be doing at 2 a.m. at night in the middle of the night, but she wouldn't let them go to sleep until they found sushi.
Wow.
So because of that, they ended up at this same place as me, and so I'm speaking to them again. And it's interesting because the Gemara says it's hard for Hashem to bring you your zivug as to split the sea.
Yeah.
And the Eilat is where the Yam Suf split. So like Baruch Hashem, Hashem had me find my wife where the Yam Suf split. But we're speaking and whatever. Again, I'm just like really vibing with this person and connecting with her, and I just like felt at home with her. But she told me, we don't live here. We live in Tel Aviv, and we planned our last week in the trip in Tel Aviv. So I was like, we're also going to Tel Aviv. So we ended up hanging out with her, me and my friends, her and her sisters, and we had an amazing time. And I left there feeling like, oh my gosh, I love this girl. But I'm like used to at this point not telling anybody how I feel about them. I got hurt a lot as a kid growing up. And I just like don't like feeling vulnerable anymore. I don't like telling people how I feel. I don't want to get hurt. So like in college, I just like kept it all to myself.
Right.
So now like I have this girl who's like this religious Sephardi Yemenite Israeli, and here I am, this Ashkenazi secular
Marlboro, New Jersey
atheist from Marlboro, New Jersey, from America. And I'm not like thinking about any of that. I'm just like, I like can't stop thinking about this girl. She's like the best girl I ever met in my life. And at the time, what I wanted to say before is all those things that I was telling you that I liked about her, I didn't realize they were because she was religious.
Right.
Those were like values that were implanted in her as part of Judaism. But I didn't associate the two because I didn't know that that's what the Torah taught. So I just was like, wow, these things are amazing. I can't believe a person's like this. I only came to realize later on that these were not two separate things. They were one and the same thing. But obviously you have like this predicament where I'm not telling her how I'm feeling, but we keep talking. I downloaded WhatsApp, so I keep speaking to her. She's telling me every day, hey, I'm like, how's it going? She's like, great. I'm like, what are you doing tonight? She's like, I'm getting set up on this date with this guy. I'm like, oh, that's great. I like want to blow my brains out. And like, I'm not telling her. So
well, you downloaded WhatsApp, so that's officially when you became a religious, probably.
Exactly. So anyway, I'm like keeping this charade going for a long time. And then I end up downloading Skype so I can actually see her and speak to her. And I'm starting graduate school at UCLA. And I'm Skyping her. It's my daytime, her nighttime. They're 7 hours ahead, or at that point, 10 hours because I'm in California. And I said, what are you doing? I'm going to sleep. Okay. Have a good night. I love you. And I closed the thing. It was totally an accident.
Oh, wow.
And then I started breaking down in sweat because I was like, what did I just do? And I went to go take a shower, and I spent like the next 20 minutes convincing myself she couldn't have heard me. And even if she did, it was so out of context and there was nothing building up to it. She wouldn't even believe that I said it because it just didn't make any sense. And then after 20 minutes, I'm like, did my hair. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Nothing happened. I went back outside. I looked at my phone and she goes, you just tell me you love me? And I was like, oh my gosh, I break out in sweat again. I go back. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I'm just like, okay, what am I doing? Like what I just said to you, what am I doing?
Just tell her how you feel.
Yeah, just like that's it. If I'm gonna get hurt now before graduate school starts. I'll find a nice non-Jewish girl when I start graduate school, and that'll be it with my life. Like, what are the chances anything's gonna even happen? I don't even know how she feels about me. So I'm just like, and maybe she really is different, and I could just tell her, and I'm not gonna get hurt this time. So I don't know. I mustered the courage, and I said it. And then she goes, David, I'm not like one of these girls from Penn State. I'm like from Israel. When you tell someone you love them, it means something here. And I said, I know. And I really did mean it. She sees it because on WhatsApp you could see.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a text back for like 12 hours.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like crushed because I'm like, here we go again. And I start going through all of that same loop in my head. You're such a loser. Nobody's ever going to like you. Nothing's ever going to work out for you. All those childhood core beliefs that you build up. And now they're like all playing back to you. So that was like the worst day of my life at that point, despite all of the mental health struggles I've had in my life. And then I like took my phone, I threw it against the wall. I was so angry and I turned off my phone. And then 12 hours later, I'm like about to go to sleep. I'm like, I have to like move on with my life. Like I said, like I'm going to get hurt and that's it. Time to start over. I turned on my phone again and I see a text from her and she said, I love you too.
Oh, wow.
So that was like went from the worst moment in my life to my best moment in my life, because the first girl ever reciprocated my feelings.
What took her 12 hours?
She went to sleep.
Oh my gosh, who does that?
Yeah, so she meant it when she said people don't just say it here.
Right.
So I guess that was like a prelude to her saying, I have to think about how I'm going to respond.
Right.
She probably spoke about it with her sisters. They're like best friends. And then she probably just fell asleep.
You were probably on cloud 9.
Oh my gosh. I was like, this is the greatest moment of my life. I was like, I was in it. But then again, well, what about this whole religion thing? Because there's a big barrier. What about the 6,000 miles? Also pretty big barrier.
10 hours, no joke.
Yeah. All of these barriers. So one of the things that you probably should know about me is like, I have a very strong will. And this strong will like caused me to eventually become a rabbi and to get smicha. This strong will caused me to get like multiple degrees, even though I have a learning disability. Like this strong will caused me to make a non-for-profit organization, even though I have no business running an organization. And this strong will has made me become like a Rosh Yeshiva of the first ever English-speaking Breslov Yeshiva. But that's all it is. It's like, I just have a very, very strong will. If I believe in something, I like pursue it with all my heart. And for her, it meant her. And so it was just like, I don't know how, but I'm going to find a way. And, it became evident to her that I wasn't just secular, but I was actually anti. And then she asked me why. So I started to tell her. It was like all of these very deep philosophical questions I've been thinking about for 15 years, reading books on, and she had never heard these things before, and she had no idea what I was talking about. I was like, so do you have an answer for these questions? She said, no. I was like, don't you see? It's not real. So she goes, David, I don't need a scientific proof to know that God exists. I know God exists. I was like, well, can you prove to me? She said, no, but I don't need to. It's just obvious to me. And so, I didn't know Sephardi culture then. I didn't know like the Sephardi faith, how it was like built in a totally different way. Yeah, Muna Peshuta. She really mamish, her whole family does. Like you'll see totally secular people in her family. Mamish sang hours of Tehillim, it's like totally different world. So she told me, David, there are rabbis that have answers to these questions. I was like, really? And she goes, yeah, go find an Orthodox rabbi in UCLA and they'll have answers to these questions. They get asked these questions all the time. So I was like, okay. And I started to go for the first time like Jewish stuff, like Hillel. There was an organization called JAM. And I was at Chabad, right? So I was at this Hillel, it was Sukkot. And I used to work out like crazy. It was also part of like trying to fill that hole. Right. So I would just like work out for hours until like I had made so many endorphins come out from my lifting of weights that I felt good for a couple hours. So I came there, I had like my guinea tee on and I had my backwards hat and I had my like, I'm a big sports fan. So I would have like my Carmelo Anthony jersey on or like whatever. And I'm like at the Hillel and I don't know that on Sukkot, you're supposed to wear different types of clothes and they're going to be praying there, whatever. I'm just like coming in, mamish, like a young college bro, like that whole thing. And I'm in there and someone comes from behind and said, do you work out? And I turn around, I'm like, yeah, who are you? So then he goes, I'm Rabbi Rupp. And I'm like, that's such a weird introduction to somebody. And I was like, and yeah, he ended up being the funniest guy and he was brilliant. And we ended up sitting in the sukkah and I'm like, okay, here's a religious rabbi. Let me start asking these questions. And for the first time in my life, I felt intellectually challenged. I never felt like somebody knew more than me until I met this person. I didn't admit it to him. But I had a lot of questions that he had a lot of answers for, and he had a lot of questions that I didn't have any answers for. And I was like weirdly intrigued by that. And so I just started following him home. And he said, you want to come over for Shabbos? I was like, sure. So this is like my first Shabbos now in this person's house. And it was kind of like, again, this weird experience where I love everything about this thing. If only this wasn't religious, it's like I'm not putting the two together. I love the family atmosphere. I love that they were talking about real things. I love that you're unplugged from society for like 25 hours. I love the peace that you felt during it. But at the same time, it's like, this is like a cult, Yeah. It's a really beautiful cult, but like a cult nonetheless. And so I loved it so much. I just went back every single Shabbat. And after about a year of me going, one of them gave me a book. I read this book, and the night that I read this book, I had an epiphany, my second epiphany, and I realized that I was wrong my whole life. And not only is there a God, but the whole reason I felt like I felt my whole life, feeling like an alien, like a stranger in a strange land, is because I'm a Jew. and all these goals that I have to bring peace to the world, all of these things that like is actually part of like the whole liberal ethos. These are really Jewish ideas. They come from the Torah. There was no such thing as social welfare or giving to the poor before the Torah was brought into the world. I didn't know any of those things. I was obsessed with these ideas. And so seeing all of these things were really Jewish, it made me realize that I feel different because I am.
What book were you given?
It's called The Secret Life of God by Rabbi David Aaron. He's
amazing.
Yeah. So I don't know what it was. Some people read that book and they go, wow, this book's amazing. Some people like, yeah, it was amazing, but it didn't, everybody's different. Everyone has a whatever. For me, I had a lot of questions and it answered a lot of them. And the night that I was reading this book, I literally was sitting there like, my whole life's going to change. Because I understood like at this point that believing in God, according to the Torah, it's not just like any other religion or a religion that not necessarily now something's incumbent on you because of that. I think one of the main ideas of the Torah is that you're responsible. Like the main idea of the Torah, you're responsible. The Torah says that the whole world was created just for you. So Rabbi Nachman says, well, what does it mean it was created just for you? That you should look for what's lacking in the world and you should fill it. That's our responsibility. So for me, I understood that there was a lot of responsibilities that would come and I was excited about it. But obviously it was a totally different type of life than I had lived. And I knew it would be a huge transition starting with Shabbos. So like the very next day, I told who was my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, I'm going to start to keep Shabbat.
That's for the people listening. That's like huge. Like this.
Yeah.
Should we spoil it for them?
You could if you want, but
let's hold on to it. Let's hold on to it. This girlfriend,
yeah, my girlfriend. So again, there's no context. It's when I told her I loved her. There was nothing leading up to that. She just knew I kept going to these Shabbatons, and I didn't change how I felt. I didn't say anything different.
I'm sure she was happy.
She was crying.
So happy.
She was happy for me that I filled something that had been missing for me for a very long time.
Sure, she's also thinking that there might be a future between the two of you.
Also probably was part of it, but I think the initial thing wasn't about that. I think that
happy for you.
Yeah, I think she was really happy for me when I first told her. But anyway, I should tell you that night that I read this book, part of what made it so impactful for me is like I'm sitting there putting the book down in my apartment in UCLA. I'm like, oh my gosh, my whole life's going to change. And I start hearing a loud sound. And I think it's coming from outside of the apartment building. So I look, there's a frat house next to where I am in the graduate school building. And nobody's there. So I realize the sound's not coming from there. I'm like, that's so weird. I'm looking around for where the sound's coming from and I can't find it anywhere. So I close the door and the sound's getting louder. So I figure the sound must be coming from inside the apartment building. So now I'm looking out the front door. I'm looking down the side to see where is the sound coming from and I can't find what's the source of the sound. So I close that door and the sound is getting louder. And now I'm starting to get scared because it doesn't seem like the sound is coming from outside of my room. And there's nothing projecting sound in my room. So as the sound continues to get louder and louder, I'm having this moment where I'm thinking to myself, one of two things is taking place right now. Either I'm having a mental breakdown or I'm having an acid flashback. And neither of these is two good options. So I got really scared. I get down on the floor. I put a blanket over my head. I said, please stop, please stop, please stop, please stop, please stop. And for 10 minutes, the sound is getting louder and louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. And I don't know what the sound is. It was the scariest moment of my life. And then in one moment, boom, it just stopped. I told my girlfriend the next day, I'm going to start keeping Shabbat. I didn't tell her about this because I didn't want her to think I was crazy. But months later, she showed me a video of a sound that was being heard all around the world and nobody knew where it was coming from. And so as I'm listening to the sound, I got the chills because I realized it was the same sound.
Wow.
So I said to her, I said, Linny, what's that sound? She goes, what do you mean, what's that sound? I said, the sound in the video you're showing me. What is that sound? She goes, David, you know that sound. I was like, I don't know that sound. That's why I'm asking you what the sound is. She said, it's the shofar blast.
So who is blowing the shofar?
God.
In your head?
In my head. I just like look up a shofar blast. What is the shofar blast? I remember when I was like, now I'm thinking back to like Rosh Hashanah growing up and they're blowing the shofar. I'm like, what does it actually mean? So I'm looking up the shofar blast says that when Mashiach comes, there's going to be a shofar that's heard all around the world and nobody's going to know where it's coming from. And they're going to get terrified. And then immediately they're going to want to return to Hashem. So that was exactly what happened to me.
Amazing.
Yeah. So obviously that spooked me out.
Yeah.
And then months later, I went to Chabad for the first time. It was like, I was keeping Shabbat at my parents' house. The nearest shul was Chabad. It was like an hour away walking. So I walked there for, to do the Sefer Torah reading. And I'm not used to sitting down and reading the Torah, not like it's a storybook, but like this is like a real thing that took place. And it's Parshat Yitro.
Yeah.
So it was my first time reading it. And it's speaking about the Jewish people receiving the Torah. Moshe goes up to get the Torah. And it says that there are shofar sounds that are being blasted. And at the bottom of the mountain, everyone's terrified. And the sound of the shofar is getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that happened to me. So it's kind of like all of these things kind of coincide. Little pieces. And then much later on, Rabbi Nachman says in the Likutei Moharan, which is his magnum opus, that there are little malachim going around always with these little shofars. And they're looking for lost objects. It's a mitzvah in the Torah to return a lost object. It's a big deal. It's like even if you're in the middle of doing something else, even if you're in Torah learning, if you know someone lost their object, you need to go return that object. Some people spend hours returning these objects because it's such a big mitzvah in the Torah. So Rabbi Nachman said, what's so big about this? So he says that there are these angels going around with these shofars, and when they find a lost object, they blow the shofar. So I realized that I was like one of these lost objects.
Wow.
And so they blew the shofar, and I just started coming back.
That's amazing. That's remarkable.
Yeah, for sure.
Was the rest history from that point on?
No. I thought all my problems were going to go away.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought all my mental health issues, my anxiety, my depression, all the difficulties that I went through growing up, my lack of self-confidence, I'm like, okay, well, God exists. Like, I'm good. The whole reason I had all these problems is because I didn't believe. And there really is someone taking care of me, like, Baruch Hashem. So there was a few years that I was doing great and I was inspired and I was excited.
And during those years, where are you holding with this girlfriend?
This girl, we got married.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was amazing.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. People started telling me as we were going to like Shabbatons and stuff like that, they're like, oh, you're like Rabbi Akiva and Rachel. I was like, who is that? And then they're like, yeah, this guy for 40 years, he hated rabbis. He wanted nothing to do with Judaism. And his wife was religious. And the wife's family was like, if you marry him, like we're kicking you out of the house. And she's like, I believe in him and I'm going to be with him. And then like he ends up learning and then becoming a rabbi. And he has like all of these students. And I was like, I had no idea what they were talking about. I never heard any of these things. But, Baruch Hashem, like over time, there are some parallels, which are pretty cool. But yeah, so we got married, Baruch Hashem, and we got married in Eretz Yisrael. My parents came to the wedding. It was really amazing.
Was your grandfather alive?
My grandfather was alive. He wasn't able to come. It was too big of a trip for him.
He was proud of you, though.
He is very happy. He's very proud to be Jewish. He's very proud of the land of Israel. He's always watching the news in Israel. He used to tell me when I was growing up, anybody who's a Jew either knows they're Jew or they're going to find out in their life. But you can't go your whole lifetime without knowing you're Jewish.
You told him you're not going to marry a Jew?
Yeah, so that was not a positive experience for him. But Baruch Hashem, I ended up marrying the most Jewish Jew.
Yeah.
So he's very happy. He was so excited when I married an Israeli girl. Like for him, it was like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening was my mental health stuff like got out of control. I ended up becoming a substance abuse counselor and a mental health therapist. But just for the viewers, and this is no knock on anything, you should know that whoever you're seeing, they're probably also seeing somebody.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely for a person to join the helping field unless they themselves have been through a lot or are currently going through a lot, because it develops a lot of compassion in you. So for a person to want to spend that time every day for hours trying to help people through things, it's usually most often because that person has been through things. So I was part of that equation. And so I'm on the one hand trying to get help for myself, and on the other hand, I'm trying to help others. But as I'm realizing that the Torah is true, so it's becoming more difficult for me to sovel, like doing evidence-based research, not being able to speak about anything spiritual because I can't document it, because I can't put in a note on the computer.
There's a lot going on at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I just started to get very dissatisfied with my work. And on top of that, because I'm working so much, I don't have time to learn. And I feel like there's so much that I need to know that I don't know.
Right.
And it's not like I don't like learning. Like I have a tremendous yearning to learn. I always did. So it was like really hard for me. And so, I ended up finding a book of Rabbi Nachman. It was called Likutei Moharan. And I took my wife to like an all Israeli Shabbaton at this Chabad home where they have Israelis come every single weekend and they give them like Israeli type of food and they speak in Hebrew. And like, so for 25 hours, I don't know a lick of Hebrew. So I'm like, what am I going to do this whole time? So I'm just looking at the books and I see this one book. It's black with silver letters called Likutei Moharan. It's just like pulling me to come look at it. And I open it up and I read the introduction. And again, I have this experience like when I got off the plane in Israel and when I met my wife. I feel like this is home, even though I've never been here. And so like that was the beginning of my journey with Breslov Hasidus. And as I start learning the teachings, I see that like these are the most prescient, most like groundbreaking teachings, not just in the Jewish world, but period. Anything that they're finding out like in psychology now that's beneficial for you, he spoke about 200 years ago, and it's like explicit. It's not even like you need to like manufacture how it's connected. It's like he literally said it's like this, and now we're finding out today it's like that, and in a few years we're going to find out it's like that. And so when you see that enough, you're like, well, this guy was living in the woods for like 38 years before he passed away from tuberculosis. How does a person like that know all of these things, right? So for me, he was just a fascinating figure. He also seemed to struggle a lot in his life and got through all of it. So that was also something that was very resonant with me.
Yeah.
But something that Rabbi Nachman speaks about, and he speaks about this in the second section in the 48th lesson, it's called the Rebbe's letter. And it's a very unusual letter. I don't think there's any other letter like that in terms of in the Jewish literature where a rabbi is speaking to his students like they're his brother or his best friend. And he's saying, listen to me. Every single person who genuinely wants to go close to Hashem has to go through tremendous difficulties and challenges. And when you first want to draw close to Hashem and you mean it, you're going to feel like Hashem is not listening to you, like he doesn't care about you. He has no interest in your prayers. He has no nachat from you. And you have to know that all of this distancing is for the sake of being brought closer. And I didn't get to that letter until I went through everything that I ended up going through. But that was true for me. And I ended up having my worst depressive episode that I ever had in my life. And it lasted 3 years.
Why's that?
Because of what I just said.
We'll be right back to this episode. A quick word from my friends at Tavito. Yes, we spoke about last week, the episode about guarding your eyes. And what better program, what better company to talk about than Tavito? Because you don't want your kids on Netflix or Hulu or any of these other streaming sites that don't have guarding your eyes in mind. But Tavito does. Jewish videos your kids will love, all in one happy place. That is Tavito.com. So maybe this is a change you and your family can make. No more YouTube. No more giving your kids that content that has questionable ethics that you really can't trust your kid to just watch. With Tavito, whether it's The Pintalach, Royal Rescue, Kivi and Tuki, or some of their brand new Elul shows, these are shows that you can trust. These are shows that you actually want your kid to watch. Head to Tavito.com. Use promo code MM10 for 10% off your subscription. That is Tavito.com. Hit the link in the show notes today and give it a shot. Use promo code MM10 for 10% off. My kids love Tavito. I think yours will too. So there's two companies I want to talk to you about, and they're both really, really hand in hand. Maybe you're buying your first home. Maybe you're buying, I don't know, a huge portfolio of real estate. When it comes to real estate, something that's super important is title. You want to make sure that your title is taken care of. It's usually the last step, and you don't want any stories. You do not want any surprises. And that's why Infinity Land Services is the company for you. Mark Hershkowitz and his company are the best in the industry, the best title company. So you tell your real estate agent, you tell your broker, when it comes to title, I really want to work with ILS. And then she'll be like, oh, you mean like the best people in the industry? You're like, yeah, the best people in the industry. ILStitle.com. And once you buy that home of yours, or maybe that apartment building, whatever you're doing, it's time to update those appliances, right? You don't want those faulty appliances. Or maybe a new construction you're dealing with. You want a brand new kitchen. You want those new fridge, that new dishwasher, that new oven. Townappliance.com, ever since 1979, has been there for you. So you got ILS, you got Town Appliance, two of the best people in their industries on here on Meaningful People. So good to have them aboard. Well, make sure you check them out. ILStitle.com, townappliance.com, or very simply, head to the show notes or the description of this episode and hit their respective links and reach out to them today.
During Shas Maisa, what did you attribute that depression to?
I think that I was very dissatisfied with my life.
Meaning you were working, you were married, and and you thought that you found gold in every aspect, but you just didn't feel it.
Right. It didn't like, it's like there's this reality, but it's not like in me to the extent that it's changing me. And so that disconnect is like a very painful disconnect.
You don't even know why that's happening.
Yeah, in some ways it's almost like easier if you never knew.
Right.
And then you don't have like that, but now I have like this, I'm here and I'm here, but they're not going together.
3 years.
Yeah. So 3 years I was severely depressed. And, you know, I also started to have this thing called brain fog, which I guess I would describe it like your computer when it's like really hot and the icons stop being able to move fast. Everything's like very logged and slow.
Yeah.
So that's like how my mind was working. And like I wasn't able to like think quickly like I used to. And I wasn't able to verbalize like I'm used to. And it was very scary for me. And so like I started going to doctors, and the doctor said, you know, maybe you're allergic to gluten, or maybe you have this, or maybe you have
They always
that.
go with the celiac
Yeah,
disease,
it's
no?
like disease. You're Ashkenazi, you know, you're white, you must have stomach problems, you know.
Yeah.
So I got like tested for everything. Everything came back like totally fine. But I spent all this time and all this money trying to find out what's wrong because I can't think, and it's like a very, very hard daily experience to not be able to think thoughts and not be able to verbalize your feelings in a way that's like not natural. And so it was causing me a lot of distress. And so like when that didn't work, I started to go see psychologists and I started to go see therapists. And, you know, they tried giving me many different psychiatric medications, and I tried many different forms of therapy, and nothing helped me. And when you go through 3 years of this, and now you have a wife who's an immigrant from another country who is struggling just to be in America, period. And then you have 2 little children now. And I'm the sole provider of my family. And now I'm just lying in bed crying every day because of how bad that I feel. And then on top of that, I have this unbelievable responsibility to these people, and I feel like I'm letting everybody down. So it's keeping me in this like very dark place.
Yeah.
But I also just can't get better. It's not like a lack of trying. Maybe I tried too hard, and it's just not getting any better. So I remember there's something that Rabbi Nachman said that like got me through this period, even though I didn't get better from this. But he says that anything that you struggle with, it's because you have potential for that thing in the opposite. So that means like if you struggle with anger, it's because you have a potential for inner peace that a person who doesn't struggle with anger doesn't have the potential for. It's like a fruit, right? If you don't have a peel, it can't be a banana that's inside. It could be something else, but it certainly can't be a banana. And a banana is very, very sweet. But the only way to get to the banana is to take off the peel. When we see peels, whether they're emotional or psychological or spiritual, we just assume something is inherently wrong. And we don't realize that the peel is supposed to be hinting to us that there's fruit there.
Right.
One of the things that Rabbi Nachman does an amazing job of is helping you take off the peel. So for me, if I'm struggling so much with depression, Rabbi Nachman would say it's because I have a greater potential for joy than someone who never struggles with sadness. That's why I have a yetzer hara to be struggling with it.
Right.
Or in this case, that I feel so unbelievably weak and incapable, it must be that I'm actually incredibly strong and I don't know it. And so just in my head, changing the dialogue of woe is me, why am I going through this? Instead, it became, if I'm ever going to get out of this, I have to be the strongest friggin' person in the world, because there's no way I'm going to be able to get out of something like this. 3 years of struggling with this, having no end in sight, no hope, nothing's helping me. For me to get from here to ever having a good life, I must be unbelievably strong, and I have no idea where that thing is inside of me. But that's the beginning of finding it. And so going through that whole period was very, very difficult. And when nothing helped me, I ended up looking at more extreme, unconventional ways of getting help. One of those ways is called TMS, which is like a newer therapy. It's transmagnetic stimulation. So it's like these little micro shocks while you're awake. You don't just feel buzzing. And they say like they've done positive results with it, and some people have been helped with it. They're doing a lot of research on it. It's like very cutting edge, whatever. My parents paid a lot of money to help me get it. Didn't help me at all. And I remember like just speaking to my wife, like, why is God doing this to me? I'm like it's not like I'm not trying. I'm trying so hard. And I'm not perfect, and I make a million mistakes, but like, it's not because I don't care. I'm trying to do the best that I can, and I need help. She starts to tell me about Eov and like all of these things, and whatever. It was like when you're in that place, you can't really hear anything.
Yeah.
But ultimately, when I got so exacerbated from this whole process and just fed up, I'm like, what is the most effective therapy, no matter what the side effects are, whatever. And I saw that there's an 80% success rate for people with treatment-resistant depression in the form of ECT, which is electroconvulsive shock therapy, which you probably have only seen in movies from the 70s with Jack Nicholson, where they administer actual shocks to your brain. You get put asleep, and then while you're asleep, they shock your brain, and it's supposed to reset these parts of you that are, not functioning properly. And if you have 5 people, let's say 4 of them have struggled with depression their whole life and nothing ever helped them, out of 5 people, 4 of them will be better after that.
Okay, that's a nice success rate.
That's an unbelievably high success rate. On the other hand, if you do this, there's a very good chance you're going to lose short-term memory for years. And sometimes you get it back and sometimes you don't. So I was desperate. And so I made up paperwork so that I can go do it. And I did it. And I was that 5th person that didn't get help.
And you lost your...
And I lost memory.
Wow.
I had people coming up to me and like, David, wow, thank you so much for what you done for me. And I didn't know who they were.
How long, like how short term was the memory that you lost?
It was like within recent years.
Your wife, you knew, your kids.
Yeah. But there were a lot of memories from the first couple of years of my kids that it took me a while before they came back, and some of them never came back.
Wow.
And it was very painful for me. Obviously, I was incredibly desperate. I wouldn't do something like that. I just felt like I owe it to my family to do whatever it takes that I could be a functional husband and father. My wife signed up to be with me, stayed with me through a very, very challenging time. Even my rabbi told me, like, during that whole time, and he was trying to make me feel better, he's like, David, listen, I know you're going through hell and I don't really know what to tell you, but nobody's wife stays with them through that.
Yeah.
When they just get married. And you're very, very lucky. And my wife stayed with me for like years in a foreign country by herself, having no idea what mental health issues are, didn't grow up with that awareness in the Sephardi Israeli world. It's like not a part of their...
Right.
And she just kept mechaziking me and telling me it's going to get better, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. Honestly, I don't know if I ever said this publicly, but like, the only thing that would get me from like one day to the next was hearing my wife put my kids to sleep and singing Hamalach HaGoati.
Wow.
And I never heard this song growing up.
Right.
And when she would sing it to them, I don't know why, it made me feel like tomorrow might be better. And I didn't even know what the words meant. It was just this song. And it kept me going. And, obviously the next day wouldn't get better, but it would, when I hear it again, I would try again. So once that didn't work, and I lost years of memory, and I still have brain fog, and I checked myself into a psych ward. I just didn't know how to help myself, and I was scared about what I would do, and I wanted to make sure that I was safe and my family was safe until I just need to go sit down, and no matter how long it takes, even if it takes months, I got to get help. I can't keep trying to do stuff on my own. I just got to figure out a way to get stable, and like that's it. And that was a life-changing experience for me. For a few reasons. One, I thought the people in there were going to be like insane, like people smashing their heads against the wall, and
right.
like, it was the nicest, normalist, most sensitive people who have like multiple degrees. But there was a stream that was consistent with everybody there, me included, that Rabbi Nachman speaks about, which is that the key to joy is simplicity, and the key to being close to God is simplicity. And the antithesis of joy is sophistication. And I realized that everyone there was trying very, very hard to control every aspect of their life, and was severely disappointed when those things didn't go the way that they hoped it would. And when you have like a lot of events that are taking place like that at one time, and they're all combusting in one moment, so that leads to feeling tremendous vulnerability, distress, kind of like totally out of control, and I need to go get help. So that was one thing for me. And I just coming to this realization, like no matter how white and black my clothes got, and no matter how felty my black kippah got, I didn't really change the way that I used to think. I like believe in God, but I'm not really letting him run my life. I'm just like, he's there, and I'm just going to keep running like a hamster on a wheel to make things happen. So that was one thing. The other thing, and this was like the biggest turning point, was I'm sitting down. My wife is visiting me with our 2 little kids. So obviously it's very sobering. My mom comes to visit me, and I'm just crying on her shoulder. And like, they're not letting me wrap tefillin unless they watch me. The only 2 things I brought with me to the psych ward was my tefillin and my Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman's book, because it was, someone even asked me that they grew up Hasidic and they went off, and now they're like in this hospital with me, and they're like, David, how could you possibly be learning now when you're severely depressed? She's like, you see anybody else learning? And I was like, I'm not learning because I'm interested. I'm like learning because it's keeping me alive. So I'm sitting there in the bed, and I have this hospital gown on, and I'm there now for like over a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I get here? I'm like thinking to my whole life, back to 5-year-old David wanting me a singing, dancing rabbi, coming down the bus and dancing down to my house and being such a happy kid, and then going through like difficulties and challenges socially, struggling in school, going through all the things that we spoke about through this interview, and then finding Hashem and now becoming a religious Jew, and just everything spirals out. And now I'm here, and I have 2 little kids at home and a wife, and I'm not there for them. And like, what happened to me? And I said to myself, if I'm ever going to get out of here, I actually have to change. And there's something that I'm doing, which I'm realizing, is that even, let's say, with Rabbi Nachman's teachings, which are so hopeful to me, that this is the only thing that's making me feel like things can really get better, that Hashem really does love me and he is going to help me. Like he says, literally in one moment, no matter what you're going through in your life, everything can flip for the very best. And he makes you feel that, Baruch Hashem. But how do you access that? How do you access these things that the Torah says? So this is a world of action. And something that I wasn't used to doing was doing. I was just thinking. When I was learning, I was just thinking. When I was growing up, I was just thinking. I wasn't actually doing things that people told me to do because I don't trust anybody that they know more than me. And so even for Rabbi Nachman, that I'm learning these amazing teachings, I'm not actually practicing what he considers to be the most spiritually and psychologically helpful thing available to you, which is this practice which he calls Hitbodedut. So Rabbi Nachman says that the greatest tool for a person to draw close to Hashem, to literally feel him in his life and to see him creating transformation and shifts for him that he wants and yearns and dreams and prays for, is through this practice called Hitbodedut, which comes from the word boded, which means to seclude yourself alone with God. He says that it's very good for a person to do this at least 1 hour a day. Okay? So obviously it sounds like an incredible amount. And I have like dabbled with this up into the point of the psych ward of like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here. If I got really inspired, maybe I did 15 minutes if somebody got sick, but I can never get past there. And then I'm like, you know what? If this person is the only one who's giving me hope, if this is the God that I believe in, he's in this book. That same person is telling me that for Hashem to be in my life in the most real way, the best thing I could possibly do is to talk to him for an hour a day like he's my best friend about everything in my life. I was like, I have to take my mind and put it here. And I have to be open to the possibility that somebody knows more than me. And how do I show that? I show that with action. So I said, Hashem, I'm making you a promise right now. Every single day from now on, I'm going to speak to you for at least an hour a day about every single thing that's taking place in my life. The good, the bad, the ugly, my dreams, my failures, my hopes, my lack of success, everything. My wife, my kids, my job, my parnasa. I'm going to talk to you about every single thing, but I am no longer going to try and figure it out. Because every time that I tried to figure it out, all of that brought me here. So you're going to have to do it. And for you to do it, I'm going to have to tell you all about it. And that's definitely going to take at least an hour. And I said, if you help me, not just get me out of here and I'm surviving and I'm just getting by day to day, but my life is going to actually be good. I'm going to be happy. Things are going to turn around for the very best. I said, if you do that for me, I promise I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to do the same for your kids. And he did. And it's been 7 years now. I just did my Hitbodedut before I came here. It's very rare that I ever miss a day. Even if it means doing crazy stuff to try to get the hour in, I don't miss the hour because Hashem held up on his end. He showed me that he really is there for me in my life, and he completely changed everything in my life. And so I'm here in America for like the 5th time in 5 years, trying to spread these teachings, this hope, this encouragement to let people know, no matter what you're going through in your life, no matter how bad it gets, even if you're mamish in Gehenna, you're in hell while you're alive, everything can change for the very best. And so that's why I'm here with you.
And that's David Kalmus. That's your life.
Yeah, that's been my life.
Up until you're very young, you know?
Yeah.
What's next?
So a few years ago, my students in Queens, well, what happened was I saw a kid walking around with Likutei Moharan in their hand. And I never saw anybody with this book. I never heard rabbis teach it. I was just like, it was just my thing.
Right.
And so I was like, you learn Likutei Moharan? And he goes, yeah, I love this book, but I don't understand it at all. So I was like, oh, that's my favorite book. He goes, can you teach it to me? I was like, I don't know if I can teach it to you. We can learn it together, whatever. So those 2 guys ended up becoming 4 guys, who became 8 guys, who became 12 guys, who became 16 guys, who became 20 guys. And before I know it, once a week, like 3 hours a night, during like one night a week, we're learning Likutei Moharan, like a lesson in depth for hours. And these guys are coming to me after like a few weeks and telling me, David, we can't just do this once a night. We have to do another night. So I'm like, I don't know. I got to ask my wife. And then like I went home and asked her. She said, you know, whatever you want. So now it's 2 nights a week we're doing this.
Wow.
20 plus guys. 3 nights a week eventually. 4 nights a week. And then for 3 straight years, 4 nights a week, I'm teaching Likutei Moharan to 20 plus guys. It's getting taped and they're putting it on YouTube. And I don't know that this is a huge chiddush. I just think like, okay, you know, we're just learning like everybody else is learning. We're just learning this thing. And I didn't know that like nothing like this was actually happening anywhere. So these guys who ended up becoming my students told me, David, listen, you need to make an organization. And I was like, an organization? They're like, yeah, do you know how many people that you can help? I was like, no. So they're like, a lot. So I was like, I don't know how to make an organization. Like I barely got through school.
Yeah.
So they're like, we're going to help you. And so we started this thing called Sion Breslov Project. We started 5 years ago. We started during COVID actually. And within like a few days of us putting up those first class, I started getting emails from around the world. And on the one hand, it was like very, very exciting because so many people were getting helped in such a short amount of time. Men, women, Jews, non-Jews. It was like crazy. I like didn't expect it at all. But on the other hand, I was getting very overwhelmed. Like it got to the point when I was still in Queens before I made Aliyah that there were literally people lining up outside my yeshiva to talk to me. And like between that and me going to visit people's homes, people that you think are very successful and wealthy and this, and their wife is depressed and nobody knows about it, or in this house and their kids are really struggling and nobody knows about it. So I know about it. I'm going to like all these places and now I'm going to Kollel in the morning and it was just getting to be too much. I just didn't have the kochot to do this. And I remember I came in one morning and it was like Gemara Shiur. And I was like, I can't do this. I just like went downstairs. I locked myself in a room and I just started crying. And I said, Hashem, I didn't make this organization for me. I have like no interest in being famous. I don't care if nobody ever hears about me. I like just did this to make good on my promise to you. I would do whatever I could to help your kids. I'm doing this thing and Baruch Hashem, it seems to be helping a lot of people, but I mamish need help. I need a lot of help because I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know how to do this. And I fell asleep and I had a dream. And my teacher, well, actually, before I get there, in the dream, I felt like I was in a place that was very dark. It felt like whatever maybe Gehenna would be like. Very dark place where people were very sick and lowly and like hunched over. It looked like something from like a bad movie. And a person would come up to me in this dream and he'd say, David, how'd you get out of here? And I would tell them, Rabbeinu sha'ag b'kol gadol, ein shum yeush ba'olam klal. The Rebbe roared in a loud voice, there is no despair in the world at all. You cannot give up. I said, I promise, if you don't give up and you believe that you can get out of here, you will get out of here. And then he would leave. And then another person would come up and would say, David, how did you get out of here? And I said the same thing to him. And another person came and I said the same thing to him. And then all of a sudden, my teacher who was upstairs comes to me in my dream while he's teaching the Gemara class. And he comes over to me and he says, David, you have no idea what you're doing. You can't give up. And I woke up from my dream. So I just kept going. And Baruch Hashem like sent me a lot of help over the years. And then I had this dream, you know, as time went on and I went to Uman for the first time. And I started to have more experience in Rabbi Nachman's teachings, students, whatever. Like, man, if we had an English-speaking Breslov yeshiva, this would be such an amazing, life-changing, transformative thing for the Jewish world.
Right.
And so I spent years praying for it, my Hitbodedut. And this past Rosh Hashanah, I was in Uman, and I was by Rabbi Nachman's kever, and I was mamish saying, Hashem, like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know where to begin. I don't know where to start. I don't know if I should wait till I'm 60 years old. I don't know what. But if you want me to do this, like, I need to know and I need help. And like, as soon as I got back from there to my hotel that I was staying at, somebody comes up to me who I'd never spoken before. And he goes, David, do you ever think about making an English-speaking Breslov yeshiva? And I was like, I think about it every day. And then he's like, I'm making Aliyah in a few months. I think we should sit down and talk. We end up talking and he goes, what do you need? I was like, well, we probably need a lot of money. And I need a lot of help. He's like, what type of help? I was like, well, I can teach and I can talk and I can like be in the front doing stuff for the boys. But every other thing, whether it's logistical or whether it's financial or whether it's about the apartments where we're going to make dorms or whether it's food, anything that's not taking place in the actual yeshiva, I need someone to do that, to be just as passionate, to care just as much, to be just as into it, be just as committed. And he's like, okay, I think I could do it. This is a 60-year-old person, didn't grow up, Breslov, and ended up getting very into those teachings in Miami through Gedalia Fenster. And then he told me, listen, I spent the first 60 years of my life on various projects. He has 2 organizations, I think, that he opened and runs, and they're very successful. And he said, but I want to spend the next 60 years of my life on the Breslov Yeshiva. Wow. And so we just started. And then I spoke to my rabbi, who I got close to while I was in Israel the past 2 years. His name is Rav Nisan David Kivak. He's very special. And it's been his dream for decades.
Oh, at what point did you move to Israel?
I moved to Israel 3 years ago, Pesach Sheni.
Was that for this or
No, I just moved to Israel because my wife is from there and really missed her family. She just like, it had been almost a decade since she was home. And it was really hard for her. And, so many chagim that we were having, it was just like, she would, she's not an emotional person like me where she's crying all the time. So when I see her cry, it means a lot more to me.
Yeah.
And she would cry on the holidays. And I could only like see it so many times before it was just like, and we had a lot of trouble with like her visa and like government stuff. So if she left, she may not come back. It was like a whole thing.
Wow.
And so it just like wasn't even push it just to leave and visit and come back. And also it was getting much more expensive. So I'm like, let's just go to Israel and we'll see what happens, from there. And so we've been there for 3 years now, thank God. And so we're starting the first ever English-speaking Breslov Yeshiva. We've been working on it this past year, having many, many hours of meetings, unbelievable people involved. We have like Haskama from like all the big Breslov mashpiyas in the world. They're all interested in this, excited about it. So anyway, it's starting in 3 months. And we have a place, it's a 3-story building. It's in Har Nov. It's a beautiful place in the mountains. It's good for Hitbodedut. Normal yeshiva with Gemara, with halacha, but happy and fun and light and enjoyable and like a brotherhood, like you're in a family, like something really, really special and different. And yeah, so I came here for 2 weeks to fundraise, which I've never done before.
That's fun.
Yeah, and to recruit, which I've never done before. So if anybody who is interested, we have multiple tracks. So we have a track for Bali Tshuva, so people who grew up maybe like me, or even, let's say they grew up modern Orthodox and they want to take another step in their learning and when they have their gap year, right? They want to spend a year in Israel, right? But they don't want to do like one of the more normative yeshivas. They're really interested in Chassidus and they want to learn Breslov, right? Or maybe they even grew up from, but they didn't get it in a healthy way. So they went off and they're trying to like refine themselves in it now. So that's like the program that I'm the Rosh Yeshiva over. That's the Baal Tshuva program. Oh. And then we have a program for kids who grew up from, and they never went off. They're all good. They just know that they want to learn Rabbi Nachman's teachings. They want to learn for 2 years. They want to get married and they want to move on with their life. And they want to do it at the Breslov Yeshiva. So we have these 2 tracks. And then we have the first ever English-speaking Breslov Kollel. So even though they're going to be learning, Shulchan Aruch and all the things that are primary in a Kollel, but they're also going to be learning Chassidus. And so this is historic. There's never been something like this. There's Hebrew-speaking Breslov Yeshivas, there's Yiddish-speaking Breslov Yeshivas, but in a generation where people are literally dying and parched for spiritual meaning and for a greater light and hope and joy. Rabbi Nachman, in my opinion, offers these things in a way that nobody else does. And so this is like a very exciting time, very overwhelming time. And Bezrat Hashem, hopefully people see this and they resonate with the project. They want this to be existing in the world. If you would like to reach out and to support it financially, there's no greater cause, in my opinion. It's very hard for me in the past to ever ask for money. I would like cringe. I would get like sick when I did it. Yeah. This is the first time I came here. I have like no problem asking because I really think this is the most important thing in the world. And then if you have any students for any of those programs, the Baal Tshuva program is a little bit more eclectic in terms of age. So maybe like anywhere from 18 to 30-ish. Whereas the kids who grew up from, it's more like 18 to 20, 20, 22, like whatever. It's a little bit of a shorter program. Yeah. And the hope is that if this is successful, eventually we'll have a women's school and eventually hopefully to build something in America as well. So it's the beginning of like a lot of very, very exciting things.
Amazing. Well, it should be with a lot of tzlacha. We'll put obviously a link that people can check this out. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. Every single aspect of it is just mind-blowing. I wish you a lot of tzlacha going forward.
Thank you. I don't know. You may want to cut this out, but can I add one thing?
Sure, please.
Okay, just to give chizuk to people. I know people are going through like a very hard time right now.
Look at that camera right there.
I know people are going through a very, very difficult time right now, whether it's in America with anti-Semitism or whether it's in Israel with all of the terrorist attacks. People are very concerned and confused and overwhelmed. So you need to know that flowers only bloom from a place of seeds getting destroyed in the ground. And it's only once the seed disintegrates in the ground that new, beautiful life grows. Same thing when a person gives birth. If a person came from outside and was looking at a woman giving birth to a child, so you would think, oh my gosh, there's two people dying. And in reality, this person's giving birth to new life. So that's what's taking place right now for a lot of us. And that doesn't make the situation easier, but it gives perspective. And so I would give you the message that Rabbi Nachman gives, which is hold on and things will get better. And I just want to say one quick story that happened to me. And I want to give everybody a lot of chizuk and amunah and in tefillah and in nisim. Okay. Years ago, after I started to become tshuva and I joined Yeshiva, so I got a call from my aunt and she told me that your cousin was in the New York City Marathon, 40 years old, scientist. And he had heart failure out of nowhere. He had no health issues growing up, 40 years. He just drops on the floor. Luckily, the person who was running behind him was a paramedic. So he quickly went to go help him, and he realized there was no way that this person was going to survive unless they put him into a medically induced coma. For anybody who doesn't know, you are very unlikely to come out of that. And if you are, you might end up being like a vegetable. So the prognosis for you is not good, even if you go into this place, but at least you survive. She told me this happened to him. And so immediately I was like, I have to go visit him and pray for him. So I tell my yeshiva, I'm not coming in tomorrow. I drive all the way to Brooklyn from Queens. It was like a 2-hour trip. I'm sitting in my car. I'm doing like a half an hour of Hitbodedut, and I'm crying to Hashem. Like, I don't know why I'm here and I don't know what I'm going to do, but help me to have the words to help this person. And I walk in. As I'm walking into the hospital, I get a text from my aunt telling me, David, I don't know if you asked me for the address because you want to visit, but they don't want any visitors. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so awkward. I'm like, I just did all of this trip. And if I didn't do the half an hour of Hitbodedut, I would have walked in already. I'm like, now I'm going to have to go back. I'm like, okay, well, just so you know, I'm literally walking in right now. So she goes, if you're walking in, you should call his mom and see if you can come up. I don't know if you guys have cousins like this, that they're always at family events, but you don't know how they're related to you. But he's like that cousin for me. I don't know how he's related to me, but he's at all of my family events. And he's the nicest guy, sweetest guy, really smart. And we've always had an amazing relationship. I have no idea how he's related to me. So I'm like really nervous because I don't know his mom and I don't know his siblings. The only person I know is his non-Jewish girlfriend, because she was coming to the family event eventually when they started going out. So I'm like calling the mom and I'm like shaking because I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And the brother picks up the phone and he's like, hey, who is this? And I say, it's your cousin David. He's like, who? And I go, yeah, I don't know either how this is happening, but I really am your cousin. And I came to visit your brother. And I just wanted to know if I could come up and just pray for him a little bit. So he's like, I don't know. We're not really having any visitors. I got to ask my mom. Can I put you on hold? I said, sure. And now I'm like shaking. Because I'm like wearing black and white. Again, they have no reference point for anything Jewish. This family hasn't even seen me. They don't even know me. And I know I'm about to walk into a room that these people have been crying for like 25 hours straight. And they have no hope probably about what's going to happen to him. And here is this religious cousin that nobody knows how he's related coming in and saying he wants to pray for him next to the bed. So the mom comes on and says, he said, my mom said, you can come. I'm like, oh my gosh. I wasn't sure if I was even happy about it. So now I'm walking in and I go up to the room. I walk in, I see him. He is literally not looking good at all. He's hooked up to a lot of machines. I see the whole family looking like they haven't slept for 24 hours. Their eyes are swollen from having cried so much. And I asked, what's going on? They told me what the doctor is saying. I said, do you mind if I pray for him? They said, sure. So I go over there, I take out Tehillim, which I don't have so much experience at this point saying. I just knew there was like a thing that I learned it from Chabad. You take their age and you add 1 to their age. So he's 40, so you say 41. Actually, he's a part of Rabbi Nachman's Tikkun HaKlali, for anybody who doesn't know what that is. But so I'm saying the 41st parak of Tehillim, and I don't know it. So as I'm reading it, it says, when you go visit the bed of a person who's sick and they're lying on their bed, Hashem is going to save them and they're going to get out. That's literally what it says in the parak. So as I'm like reading this, I got so juiced up. I put the book down and I just start doing Hitbodedut right there. And I did it in a way that was quiet, that nobody would hear me. But I start praying harder than I ever prayed in my life. And I'm saying to Hashem, listen, this person's 40 years old. He has no idea who you are. He's never heard of Hashem. He's never heard of Torah. He doesn't know you. Why would you bring a Jewish person to this world for 40 years to never know who you are, to take him in this way and leave his family like this? There's nothing good that's coming from this. I don't believe it's going to end like this. I think you could do something amazing now. I don't believe in the doctors. I don't believe in the nurses. If you want right now, he could get up. And can you imagine what a Kiddush Hashem it would be if everyone sees that this religious person with this kippah comes in and starts praying next to this person and all of a sudden he wakes up? Maybe my family won't think I'm crazy. Maybe my family will actually like realize that there's a God, and not just that there's a God, that we're his children and he loves us more than anything in the world. Like the Baal Shem Tov says, that even the least of any single Jew, Hashem loves more than anybody's only child. So, and also I had never gotten any prayers answered up to this point. So I was feeling like very tense and desperate. So it was kind of like I accidentally just happened to put my Judaism on the line, which Rabbi Nachman does not suggest. Nobody suggests this, but I did it because I was desperate. And I said, Hashem, I can't do this anymore. I spent years like doing tshuva and investing my whole life in this. If he does not get up from the bed, I'm done. And I stopped praying. It was an hour and I cried like a baby. And I look up and I turn around and the whole family's staring at me like this. And I said, is everything okay? They said, what did you say? I was like, I'm not going to tell you what I said. But there's like, I'm like, why? They're like, because his eyes opened. And I look back at him and he looks exactly the same. My grandfather was in a coma when I was younger. His eyes moved around. It didn't mean anything. Ended up passing. So I'm like, okay, whatever. All of a sudden, the machines in the room start going off. Doctors start running in. Nurses start running in. And I'm so overwhelmed from this whole entire event for the past few hours to the fact that I just had the most intense prayer in my life and I put my Judaism on the line. I'm so jacked up from the whole thing. I went to the family and I said to them, listen, I know you may not believe in God and you may not believe that your son is going to get out of here. But I said, I promise you, if you do believe and you feel and you hope and you don't give up on it, that he will walk out of here with you. He will get out of this bed and he's going to walk out of here with you alive. And I walked out of the room and I said, what the heck did I just say to those people? But I didn't want to give up my Judaism. I just wanted him to answer me. I went to the Bikur Cholim room and I started saying Tehillim for hours. Just waiting, hoping I'm going to get a phone call. Someone's going to tell me, by the way, your cousin woke up. Yeah, so an hour goes by, 2 hours, 3 hours. I'm there all day saying Tehillim. I leave the hospital because I said, I have to go home. It is what it is. You know, I tried my best. As I'm walking out, my aunt gives me a phone call and she said, David, thank you so much. I was like, for what? She said, your cousin woke up.
Wow.
I said, what do you mean? She's like, the doctors are speaking to him. He's up. He's responding. Like, you did it. I dropped on the floor and I started crying. Because you can imagine, I didn't believe my whole life. And now I went this whole thing on a leap of faith, but I don't really sure because he never answered any of my prayers. So now, like in one moment, I'm like not only like really realizing, oh my gosh, God is real, but I just had a miracle happen. And that same person, every single year, he attends dinners for miracle survivors. The doctors don't know how he survived. They've done research on him in like the Boston Research Medical Journal or something to try to figure out how he survived because they didn't think that he would and there was no reason he should. And the point is like this. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says, Ein shum yeush ba'olam klal. There's no such thing as despair in the world at all. No matter what you're going through in your life, no matter how deep and no matter how dark and no matter how hopeless you may feel, there's always hope. And even if a knife is against your neck, you can never stop praying to God. And if you give it all to him completely, Hashem will never let you down. He loves you more than anything in the world.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening or watching this episode. If you are watching, make sure to head to the YouTube comments and write very simply, hey, I'm watching this episode from wherever you are in the world. Would love to hear where you're watching from. And when you do that, you enter to win $250 cash or Meaningful Minute swag. 2 winners. Make sure to comment right away. We'll be replying to 2 comments on Tuesday, so make sure you leave those comments and check out for a reply. Like and comment. Make sure to like this video and comment on it. Can't wait to choose the winners. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for watching this podcast. We'll be back at you with more episodes of Meaningful People coming next week. Of course, Stories of Hope is coming out with a new episode this Sunday night with Sephora Grudko, so stay tuned for that. You can search Stories of Hope with Sephora Grudko on YouTube. You can search it on Apple, Spotify. It is there for you. Make sure to subscribe, like, leave a comment, review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon.